Ooh, oh, oh, oh,
Hey everyone, welcome to our first ever community day, and all of us are elated to be sharing this experience with you. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, SheSharp is a pun on C#, the programming language. We get that asked all the time. And it's an organization which fosters diversity and inclusion in technology and entrepreneurship. We're primarily based in the Netherlands, Amsterdam specifically, but the wonderful thing, or the silver lining rather, of this pandemic is that now we have virtual events. So you can join from anywhere, it can be anyone. So hopefully you can tell us where you're from and where you're watching us from in the chat as we go through these sessions. In the past, we've been known for holding events of various types, spanning from how to negotiate your salary to more technical topics such as programming for machine learning and challenges within data science. If you want to keep in touch with us and follow us, we're on all of the social media, and we'd love to hear from you, of course. Our meetup is especially where we typically post and receive RSVPs for our events and where we first post about events that are upcoming. And our Slack nowadays is quite active. So if you want to join our community, have a casual chat with the other members, ask for advice, for example, that's a great place to join us. Furthermore, we're always looking for people to speak at our events. We know that the opportunities to speak are sometimes few and far between. It's hard to see where you can kind of put your skills to test. And if you're interested in speaking, please get in touch with us through that form, www.shesharp.co/call-for-papers. And we will get in touch with you if we have an event coming up that could use your expertise. Furthermore, we're also looking to, always looking for partners to host events with us. So if you're a company or organization that's interested in hosting with us, then please get in touch with us as well through this URL on the screen right now. So a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a code of conduct, which applies to all of our events, including all of the sessions today. So please be mindful of the following. We'd like everyone to use welcoming and inclusive language, respect pronouns, for example. Please be respectful of differing viewpoints and experiences. Please be graceful when accepting constructive criticism. And we'd like everyone to adopt an empathetic approach to other community members. Any unacceptable behavior will not be tolerated and will result in your being removed and blocked from event and probably future events. This is a reminder of how today is going to go. We have 2 tracks. This one is the story track, featuring stories of journeys through tech and in the tech industry, how people got into tech, for example. The other track is our technical track, where speakers will be showcasing their work and specifically technical topics. You can feel free to switch between the 2 tracks by going back to the community day page. You can switch tracks in between sessions if you really want to, although of course we don't encourage that. And please feel free to join the Slack discussions during breaks, and please post any questions or discussions in the chat. If you're having trouble with the chat functionality, please switch to the YouTube streams where you can comment on the videos in the same way that you would any other YouTube video. A virtual happy hour will be happening at the end at this URL right here, shesharp.co/networking. And it will be hosted in a virtual bar. I don't know if any of you have experienced this before, but it's super cool. You get to kind of use an avatar and move yourself around just like you're in a real bar. So we're really looking forward to it, and we're looking to connect with all of you afterwards. During the sessions, feel free to comment on the videos and ask questions. We'll have representatives from SheSharp monitoring all of our channels for comments and questions throughout. Before we begin, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Microsoft, who helped us organize everything and who were instrumental, absolutely crucial in making this day happen. And another big thank you to Elastic, who kindly sponsored this event and are hosting the panel on self-advocacy today at 17:50, so 5:50 p.m. Thank you, and we hope you really enjoy the event. Great, so now we switch gears to our first their story. Again, just a reminder, oops, yes, thank you. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to please use the chat function to say hi and tell us where you're joining us from. You can again use the chat function to pose any questions you have for Rain during this session. If you are having trouble with the chat function, again, please check out our streams on social media, mostly YouTube. I think we might have a Facebook one as well, and we will address your comments coming from there as well. So don't worry if the chat function isn't working for you. In any case, first, we have the amazing Rain Leander in our first their story. If you don't know Rain, there's definitely someone who I would invite to a dinner party that I would have with a bunch of, they always ask the question, who would you invite to a dinner party, dead or alive? And Rain would be one of those people, because they're surely have a lot of stories, even more than the one they're about to tell, including one about skydiving with the Queen. I want to pick your brain about that, Rain. During the day, they are a developer advocate at Equinix, but there's so much more. So let's give a hand to Rain.
Thank you, Emily. You are awesome. And thank you so much, SheSharp. I have been pronouncing it C-sharp everywhere, but I'm trying SheSharp. And yeah, I just wanted to say hello. And yes, we are starting with a their story. This is normally a track about her story. I wanted to say thank you, but also put that caveat in. My pronouns are they, them. I was born with a uterus, but my identity, my preferred pronouns are they, them, and my identity is non-binary. If you have any questions around that, I'm happy to answer them, what it's like to be non-binary in tech. It's a lot like this, where you can be an ally to women and men, and there are other things to say. There are other stories around that, but today is not about necessarily being non-binary as much as how I started coding, how I got to be a developer advocate at Equinix. Equinix Metal specifically, it's a little section within Equinix. And yeah, and I hope today to encourage others to dive into coding, to get going, even if your background is something you think is completely opposite of coding, like maybe dance. Because I always thought that to get into coding, you had to have, professionally, that you had to have a CS degree. And I'm here to tell you, nope. Because when I was dancing professionally, yes, that's me. Those all three are me. Very young, 10, 15 years ago. Good life. I was struggling. I'm talking to you from Groningen in the Netherlands, but I am an American. I grew up in the States and I dance professionally in the States. And if you dance professionally in the States, or frankly have any artistic endeavors, it's hard. You can work 80-hour weeks and be barely getting by. Especially if you're in New York City, where the rent is particularly high. Whew. I have an undergrad in dance. When I was very, very young, I started dancing for a dancer, I was 14 when I started dancing. And at 14, because you know everything when you're 14, I knew that I wanted to dance professionally when I grew up. And I stuck with that for years and years and years. And it wasn't until I was very bitter and angry that I retired. But here's what I want to tell you while I was dancing. I happened to find myself in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a woman who was a professional web developer. And I said, how did you get started? Did you have a CS? Do you have a CS degree, or are you self-taught? Back then, and I'm dating myself a little bit, this is the late 90s, there were not so many boot camps. There were no MOOCs at all. And I said, how do you do what you tell me? Tell me your things. And she said, here's the website. I taught myself, completely self-taught. And I was like, what? And so I taught myself a couple of languages, HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of PHP. And I started bartering for services while I danced. I had a full-time during the day thing that I would do, like either receptionist or secretary, data entry, something like that. And then I ran a full dance company, and I would need things like rehearsal space, performance space, costumes, lighting design. And I would go to people and I would say, hey, would you like a website? And often they would say, yeah. And I said, how about 3 months of rehearsal space, Monday through Friday, blah, 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 and I will build you a website. And they would often say yes. This is completely outside of the US taxation department. I don't recommend necessarily following the system, but this is what I did, and it worked. This is how I survived as a dancer in the US. Here's the thing, is that all you need to get started in coding is, well, frankly, the internet and a computer. But besides that, you need to want it. And frankly, if you want it, you will find the time, you will find the space, you will find the resources, the MOOCs, the boot camps, you will find your learning style, all of that. But there are only two things that I really take away from learning. And that is that professionally, in what I do now and what I did in engineering, I've done a lot of coding. You need to know how to Google or research otherwise. You need to know when to stop researching and ask for help. And you need to be very comfortable with making mistakes. The thing about learning as an adult, or after we consider ourselves an adult, is that we don't like to mess up in open, right? The thing that kids can do better than we can, adults, is they can fall and get back up and keep going when they're learning something, how to ride a bike, how to swim, all of it. They can make those mistakes and keep going. So I want you to make mistakes, make a mess, learn from it, and keep going. Those are the two things. Google, make a mistake, conquer the world. It's fine. So no, you don't need a CS degree. Now, how did I go from dancing to coding on the side and coding on the side to actually coding full-time? Well, where were you on 9/11? I was a receptionist, and I was no judgment on receptionists, but I was bored out of my mind. I was pretty miserable 40 hours a week. When I was sitting and answering calls and checking mail and bringing guests to other people. It was not my jam, but it paid the bills, and it paid the bills so that I could dance full time and whatnot. And it was at a control room group. So they had massive conferences with like huge television screens. And when 9/11 started, everyone in our building came to our conference center to watch what was happening. And so it was on this huge TV screen, bigger than me, that we witnessed live the second plane going into the buildings. And all I could think, I was staring at the top of these buildings and watching that plane and watching people jump out of windows. And all I could think was, what if I was a receptionist right there today? And I realized I did not want to die doing this. And 40 hours a week is a long it's a long time to be risking your life, those 40 hours. And I thought, no more. My second lesson is, if you're miserable, stop it. If you want, here's the thing, is that this community day is for people who are typically jumping into tech, having done something else. If you are doing something else that is outside of tech and you are joining tech to find a better way, please do it sooner rather than later. There's no reason to be miserable 40 hours a week or even 30 hours a week. Or frankly, there's no reason to be miserable, right? So that's why I jumped in to get my master's in IT. And I want to step back for a second and say that I got my master's in IT from the American Intercontinental University in Sandy Springs, and I highly recommend not doing that. It was the option I had for me at the time that was the quickest certification. It was $80,000 and I just paid it off last year. It's been 20 years since I got that master's. But what that certification did for me, which is the same thing any certification will do, is it opened doors. People, when I applied to jobs, they no longer saw an undergrad in dance and not a lot of experience. They saw a master's in IT and they were willing to start that conversation. And that's why I got that master's. It didn't teach me anything new. I actually had self-taught myself. I had self-taught a lot of what was in the curriculum already. The only thing that they gave me besides the piece of paper was self-confidence to apply to those jobs. Immediately after, I became a support engineer with a Windows company. And shortly after that, I joined Red Hat. And that's history. So please, if you are miserable, stop doing it and find what makes you happy. We don't need to angle on the darkness of what if I died today, would I appreciate what I'm doing right now? But what if you had $1 million to do whatever you wanted to do? What would you do? Do it. Okay, so I'm breaking rules a little bit. Please don't tell my partner. We do not normally put our kids on the internet. This is my firstborn. And if you live in the Netherlands and you have a child, you are allowed to declare part-time. I was working at Red Hat. I was a technical account manager. And if I'm honest, I was kind of not happy doing what I was doing. But I also wanted to see if I wanted to do this parenting thing full-time or part-time or find the balance. And thankfully, I live in a country that allows you to explore that. And so when this adorable... he's like 2 in this picture. When this guy was born 6 years ago, I said, let's explore. And I went back to those coding lessons, those tutorials. I kind of looked at my coding experience, which was HTML, CSS, PHP, JavaScript. It was at this point 5-7 years old. And so frankly, that knowledge, this was way before HTML5. This was OG HTML. So I knew that I was going to have to go back. And I noticed I found all the MOOCs that are there, and I found Django girls and Rails girls. And I started going to these workshops, and I remembered, oh yeah, I love to code. And I'll get into the zone where I'm just like, and time will pass and it's a beautiful thing. And I was like, you know what? I want to code, but also you may notice that I dance. I wanted to start speaking in public at tech conferences. And I was like, how hard could this be? I'm a performer. And so I started applying to tech conference. So in the meantime, of course, in the Netherlands, you're allowed to go part-time and Red Hat can't fire me. So they were like, all right, your new job is to find a new job, either within Red Hat or outside of it. And I was like, cool, I'm doing this explorations. I'm applying to tech conferences. And I got in. Oh. But then I ended up joining Red Hat Engineering, specifically in OpenStack, specifically in the Python language. And to be very precise, and you can ask me about this later if you want, I worked on the O installer to make it more accessible for the end user using Ansible code. But I also had these 2 conferences that I applied to, and I went to my boss and I was like, hey, cool, ready to be a Python developer, awesome, but also I've got these 2 talks. And he's like, great, go do them. And I do them, I come back and he's like, was that fun? Do you like that? And I was like, I love it. And he goes, go do it some more. Talk about this project. And so for a year, I was in the engineering department, probably coding 50% of the time, but traveling and giving talks and writing blogs. And by the way, this is not necessarily an engineering title. It's a developer relations title, which if you haven't heard of, I'm happy to talk more about, but it's basically where you're good at coding and good at technical things and good at ingesting the technology, but you're also good at public speaking and writing and networking, going to parties and yes, drinking beer. But you can balance those 2 things, and that is exactly me. And I was very fortunate that Red Hat gave me the space to explore that. So my point with this, with my adorable son, is that you have to be curious, and you can't just necessarily just go, okay, I want to do this and just go for it. Yes, that's an awesome approach. But for me, I had to be curious and be like, I wonder if I would enjoy XYZ, and then go try and do that. And if you maintain that curiosity, which goes back to the making mistakes and being like a child, you will be very successful in finding your happiness and not being miserable. So here's the part where we get to kind of uncomfortable talk. I know we talked about 9/11, but this to me is even scarier. And that is compensation negotiation. It wasn't until, and I realized I gave you a picture of Arthur, but I didn't give you a picture of my twins. And that's because the twins are 3 and they can't actually give me permission to use their photo yet. It will happen. A couple of years ago, we were trying to have a second child and nothing was happening, by the way. And I went to the doctors and they were like, you can't actually have kids. Nothing's going on. And Arthur's a miracle. And I was like, and by the way, this is insight to who I am. When the doctor said, you can't, I stopped listening, crossed my arms, and I went, you watch. Now, in the Netherlands, after a certain age, by the way, I'm 44, after a certain age and a certain level of hormones, they won't give you any kind of assistance for having a child. It's just not done. And so my options were to adopt, to ask someone else, or to keep trying. And my partner and I decided to keep trying. And then we were pregnant with twins. So So I guess we told the doctors. But having not one, not two, but 3 children means that your expenses don't go slightly up. They go a lot up. And all of a sudden, my compensation at Red Hat was not enough. And initially, this is how I tried to ask for a raise. Hey, so I think I've been doing a lot of stuff really good, and I'm would really appreciate more money. And shockingly, no one listened. And over time, I would ask more aggressively. I would bring up specific, tangible accomplishments as to why I was worth a higher tier than I was currently being paid. And sadly, it didn't work out. So then I started applying to other companies, asking for higher compensation than I had ever thought that I was worth. And here's the thing about negotiating your compensation is 2 things. 1, know what you're worth. And 2, stand firm. And those 2 things are so hard if you were raised with a uterus. One of the reasons I figured out what I'm worth is 1, I did a lot of research on experience levels for industry for what I was doing. So developer relations, the amount of experience I had, plus the amount of programming experience I had. And I talked to people who are working in the industry who were working in the industry for about the same amount of time that I was. And here's the thing, as a non-binary person, I did not feel limited to speaking only with the women. I spoke to everyone, other non-binary people, women and men. And I was like, how much are you making? Because I'm not. And I discovered that other people within the industry were making double, triple, and quadruple what I was making. I also discovered the average income for the Netherlands and was actually kind of disappointed. The Dutch income for ITC, it's called here, is very low. But part of that is because normally you don't have a student loan like $80,000. And also you might not have 3 kids. And so I realized that I needed to get employed by a large remote company that was willing to pay me for experience rather than location. So that. Second, stand firm. There were so many jobs that I interviewed for that were perfect for me that I had to turn down because the pay was not comparable to my goal. And it was almost heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. It wasn't almost. It was heartbreaking. I was heartbroken to turn away from those moments. But the whole reason why I was searching for a new opportunity was not because I was unhappy, but because every month we were dipping into our savings account. It was a specific situation that was specifically compensation based. And so I stuck to my goal. Now, here's the other thing, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I'm going to, just between you and me, is that when I got my first offer from Equinix, on the inside, I was like, "Wah!" But on the outside, in the viewfinder, I went, okay. But that's a little bit disappointing because I said that I needed my base compensation to be X. It was so hard. It was so hard, and it will be so hard. That's the thing about negotiation, is that here's the thing. You can practice negotiating with anything, and it doesn't have to be your income. It can be, well, it doesn't have to be your job. You can go to free markets and negotiate the price you're going to pay for something. And this is when you can practice staying firm, keeping a smile, and not backing down. And the thing is that you have to be willing to walk away. And it's, yeah, I'm not going to say it again. I'm saying it again. It's so hard, but you can do it. This is a thing you can do. You can be curious. You can make mistakes and learn from them. You can figure out how to Google and when to ask questions, and you can become a coder. And I hope that you've learned something from this. I hope you're inspired to go out and play and find your new adventure and to negotiate for what you're worth, because you are so worth it. Yes? So let me know what questions you have. And thank you so much for today's opportunity. And I'll wait for Emily.
Thanks so much, Rain. We don't have, if anyone has any questions, please post them on whatever you're streaming this from, whether it's in our chat function on the actual community platform, or whether it's in YouTube or Facebook or another streaming service that we're connected to. But I'll kick it off with a couple of questions on my end. I would say, let me ask a hard question, I think. And again, Rain, we've already talked about this, but feel free if you're not comfortable speaking about it. But has being non-binary affected your career either positively or negatively? I feel that with being non-binary, I can imagine you're naturally more open-minded than others, in the sense that you did have the wherewithal to move from being a dancer, which is like as far from tech as one can possibly be. But in some ways, yeah, just wanted to see in your own experience, what that was like.
It doesn't make life easier. Let's start out with that. It's not like you're going closer to the male gender and therefore flipping a switch in your brain, and all of a sudden you can be aggressive and you can have the confidence of a white boy and all that stuff. It doesn't make things easier. It actually makes things much harder. And first of all, I want to add a caveat, is that when I speak as a non-binary person, I'm still only speaking as myself, and everyone has a different experience and viewpoint and whatnot. And it also makes a difference, I think, if you were born with gonads or if you were born with a uterus. That said, it's a transgender. You don't live in the gender that you relate to. And so there's a lot of psychology around that, of figuring out your own truth. I actually knew that I was non-binary in the late 90s, right around when I started coding, because I was playing this live action role play. It's a game, and somebody came up to me, a plot person wanted to create this NPC, this non-player character who was so ancient and beyond our realm that they were genderless. And he specifically said to me, I feel like you could pull it off. And I said, yes. And also, I wish I had a label for that, because that's who I am, really. Not that I'm ancient and beyond gender. But that was when my brain started going, wait, so woman and man. This was the late 90s. Thank you to millennials who started these dialogues, who were like, you know what? gender is a construct. And I was like, oh, yes, it is. Like, kind of thing. And I didn't come out of the closet and start asking people to use the they, them pronoun until like 5 years ago, which was right when I was giving birth to kids and asking them to call me mama. And so it was like I was doing the epitome of what it means to be a woman in our society, which is bullshit, by the way. You do not have to have kids to be a woman, according to cultural norms. And I was also saying, I'm not a woman. I'm non-binary. I'm queer. I am not just my uterus. And so, but within tech, there are not a lot of us. Strangely, within DevRel, there are a lot of us. And I think it has to do with DevRel, developer relations. You're more in touch with the psychology of people and relationships. And so you're more likely to think about yourself as well as others and your relationship to them. And so that I've actually, my experience is that there are a lot more alternative, gender is a construct, kind of non-binary people within DevRel. That said, I wish there were, it's not that I wish there were more people who are non-binary. It's that I wish that tech was a safer space for people to say and be whoever they want to be. And that to me is more important than being non-binary or not being binary, or being woman or man or anything else.
Makes a lot of sense. Great, thank you for that answer. I have a couple questions from the audience. So first one is, what do you recommend for finding that stopping point for those times when you don't know how to do something and spend time researching in a work environment?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I started, like where I started from was like hours and days lost before I would ask, like forever. And what actually started flipping me over to ask sooner is escape rooms. Okay, so if you've never done an escape room, it's a typically 1 hour timed space in real life that you are locked into and you have to solve a bunch of puzzles to get out. Here's the thing is that while I was traveling, I actually don't drink beer. And so you find that when you travel, you need to kind of have a second hobby to be like, relax. And I would go and do escape rooms wherever I traveled. And so one year I did 47 escape rooms. And I don't recommend doing 47 escape rooms, but I do recommend kind of giving yourself a time limit to where if you can't figure it out in 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 60 minutes, you ask someone. It's an automatic thing. Just, nope, time's up, let's go. And to me, there's also by the way, there's also this, it's called decoding. And it's this thing where you tell someone else who can't argue or actually ask questions at all. And you tell the duck, okay, I've got this bug on line 42, and it should be returning a true or a false, but it's only returning integers. Oh yeah, so if it's returning integers versus blah, 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 and it's where you figure it out on your own, and it's called decoding. So this is a form of asking. That's the thing. But also give yourself time. You've tried decoding, you've gone for a walk or had a cup of tea, then ask questions. And that's the thing is I didn't get good at that until I did a series of escape rooms where there's a short time limit and you have to deliver by a certain time. Hopefully you will not figure that out under a you're fired situation, but it has to do with figuring it out yourself. Where is your time limit?
Yeah, so like setting boundaries for yourself, essentially, in all the ways, I suppose.
In all the ways.
In all the ways. I guess that leads to another question about when you were talking about negotiations, especially for salaries. And so, how do you have any key reasoning points to use while negotiations, while you're in the negotiation period, to really drive being paid for experience over location?
So, being paid for experience over location is a dialogue you can start all the way with the HR and the recruiters. That's something you ask right away. And you ask, do you pay based on location or experience? And frankly, if they're like, what do you mean? Make sure that you know, I have 11 years in the tech industry, 15 years within I've been specialized in open source for 5 years, and I specifically have infrastructure experience for 8 years. Therefore, I am worth. And that starts all the way from the beginning. You don't want to get all the way to the end of a intensive, especially within tech. We have to like jump through all these hoops and prove that we're technical and whiteboard and all this crap. We don't want to do that to get to the end and find out, oh, they pay based on location and it's not enough. You want to start at the beginning. Now, here's the thing is that if you don't have that experience, if you can't say, I have 10 years in the industry, you say, well, I have watched 3 MOOCs and I've been volunteering within open source for 2 months. You're not going to find their pay on experience is going to be lower than the pay on location. So it comes after a little bit of time. But yeah, talk with them right away.
Yeah, I think we also have a panel later on. This is some self-promotion on self-advocacy, and I think this is in line with that, where basically you have to learn how to like you were saying with the borders for yourself and boundaries. It's the same kind of thing where you're okay, what is the threshold I'm willing to accept, and let's work from there, as opposed to just kind of taking whatever's thrown at you, because that's generally not going to benefit you as opposed to the employer. I think we have room for one more question. Tessa asked, I did not negotiate my last salary since the month after that. I would have been out of a job because of the contract ending. How would you negotiate in a situation like that? I guess where you're sort of perceiving yourself as at a lower end of the spectrum, if you will.
So after you've already started, there are a couple of things in there. And one is that if you have already started, it is much more difficult to negotiate a raise or a promotion after. Companies may have very strict policies about only giving a 15% raise, which is bullshit. But it behooves you more to negotiate at the beginning, because once you've started, the bump ups are going to be far in between, no matter what company you work for. And second, if you're in a contractor situation, you can negotiate just as much as if it's a permanent situation. Especially in the Netherlands, every job seems to start with a temporary contract anyway, even if you know that it's a permanent position, but you're going to have like a 1-year contract initially. So treat them all like permanent. It's negotiation starts, do it before you start, step in. Now, you have a bit of an advantage if you are a 3-month contractor or whatnot, in that for those 3 months, you work your butt off. And then as your contract is ending, you can say, look, you can hire someone else, or you have me who has this experience with your product and can do X, Y, Z, have specific examples, but I need a raise of blah, blah, blah. 10%, 15%, 1,000 euros, whatever it is. And remember that it's not just about compensation necessarily. For me, it very much was. But you can negotiate for vacation, for benefits, for so many things are negotiable. Flexible work hours, which is priceless. Lots of options there.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think we're just ending up. We're doing exactly right on time. We're doing well. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Rain. That was super cool. You're great.
Thank you, Emily.
Love you. I want to be friends now. We'll grab those beers that you were talking about earlier. For the rest of us, we have a 15-minute break right now, and then we'll continue on with another her story with Stacey Cashmore. So hope to see you all in about 15 minutes.
Well, hello my friends. Welcome back to the last day of the challenge.
Whoa, oh, oh, You're stepping up from the rest. Just keep on passing the test. And then you gotta climb higher. Climb higher. Never fire. Burn brighter. Be stronger. Go longer. Climb higher. Climb higher. You're feeling strong, you'll be the last one standing. The fight is on and you're the one commanding. The clock is ticking and there's no one inside. The lights are shining so bright. You need to do what's right. Just
Ooh, oh, oh, Hey everyone, welcome back. For those who are joining us anew, please use the chat function to say hi and tell us where you're joining us from. You can also use the chat function to pose questions we have for our speakers. If you're having trouble with the chat function, you can also switch to one of our streams. We have one going on YouTube, and you can comment there just as you would on any YouTube video. Next up, I am delighted to introduce Stacy Cashmore. She's a tech explorer DevOps at Omniplan, and in her own words, it's a title she loves very much because it says everything about what she does, whilst also not saying that much. Essentially, Stacy codes with colleagues and helps teams improve their collaboration, helps businesses helps businesses improve their agility. When she's not at her day job, she can be found tinkering with her classic car when it works. And she has a passion for building with Lego. So far, she's built a lot of things, including a modular building street, complete with its own 50 themes diner that has its own working radio. I think I'd like to see a demo of this. So here's hoping she can show us her whole Lego collection at the happy hour or afterwards. Without further ado, here's Stacy Cashmore and her story.
Hey, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me now. Now, when I do a talk, I normally don't do an introduction about myself right at the start. I try and start with something way more important to the subject that I want to be talking about. But this is supposed to be my story, so I guess for once, an introduction at the start is where it should be. Hi, I'm Stacy Cashmore. I've been a software developer since the mid-1990s. Since last year, I am honored to say I've been awarded the Microsoft MVP for Developer Technologies, and I've been speaking at conferences since February 2019. And my story today is about how I came to start speaking, how I found my style when giving presentations, and what it was like to give that first very scary presentation 2 years ago next month. Now, before I get into my story, there's something that you need to know about me first, and that is that I suffer from debilitating anxiety and depressive mood syndrome. Why isn't important to the story, but it did make my life increasingly difficult. At the beginning of 2018, I got to the point where I couldn't even work. I spent my days staring at my screens, not being able to do anything just trying not to cry and just wishing I could hide under my desk. Eventually, I found the nerve, courage, and the energy to ask for help. And I'm really pleased to say that I got some, and it was amazing. But even with that help, groups of people, they still are a huge problem for me. But despite this, I still always try to attend meetups and conferences because I loved being inspired by seeing all of these different ways of working, to learn new techniques and to see all of the amazing technologies which are becoming available. And in autumn 2018, Techorama was held in the Netherlands for the first time. It is a huge .NET conference with amazing speakers from all over the world. I really wanted to attend. I knew it was going to be super hard, but I got a ticket and I went anyway. Now, one of the things that triggers my anxiety is the thought of being late for anything. So to try and avoid that, I made sure I left early. If there was traffic jams, it was fine. I had the time. I could get there on time. As it turned out, I left so early. There was no traffic on the road whatsoever. I was around an hour and a half early for the first session. I think I was one of the first attendees to actually arrive. And it gave me 90 minutes in an increasingly crowded space with nothing to do and nowhere to hide. And it really, really triggered me. Now, the first two sessions of the day, they were fine. You're in a cinema setting. You've got a huge screen in front of you, which is so bright that you can't see the people around you. You can almost forget about them. But after those first two sessions, there was a first break for refreshments and, of course, for the hallway track. Now, this conference is held in a huge multiplex cinema. But those hallways, they're pretty much designed to allow staggered emptying and filling of rooms. Having 1,000 or so people suddenly pouring into those rooms with the vendors and the vendors' displays and everything else and the food, I panicked. I had a complete panic attack. I backed up against a wall. I threw my arms in front of my face to protect myself from I don't know what. And I slid down the wall onto my hunches. Thankfully, there was an entrance to a room right next to me, waiting for the next session. I managed to get inside. It was empty. It was dark. And during the break, I managed to try and calm myself down. I had a huge headache from all of the adrenaline from the anxiety attack, but I could continue at least. But I had that attack as a main memory of the day. And I absolutely had to do something to get rid of that, because with that in my head, I might not make it back for the second day, and I really wanted to be there. And at this point, I need to make a slight aside. For those of you who have seen Reverse Casual Friday on Twitter, you may have seen that I love 50s rockabilly full circle swing dresses. It's what I wear when I want to feel good. On that day, I was in jeans and t-shirt because I thought conference practicality. But I had seen somebody there, and they're in this amazing swing dress with this fantastic petticoat, superb combination. And I decided that I was going to challenge myself. I was going to give this person a compliment on her outfit. Now, it doesn't sound much, just giving somebody a compliment, but I can't do it. It's one of the things that terrifies me to my very core. Sometime that afternoon, I was in the bathroom washing my hands, and the person with the dress just happened to be standing next to me. I've got my chance to give this compliment. Only it turns out she wasn't an attendee. She was a speaker, the awesome Jessica Engstrom. That just made it even harder because now I'm not speaking to a person, I'm speaking to a speaker. I took a deep breath, and in what in my head is in a totally stalkery way, just burst out with, I've just got to say that dress you're wearing, it's fantastic. It was supremely difficult. It was exhausting, but I managed it. And we chatted for a few minutes about swing styling, swing dresses, and the practicalities or not thereof. I'd done it. Went to the last session, drove home with a really awesome memory for the day now, trying to take place of that anxiety attack. And I thought that's where this story was going to end. Fate sometimes has other ideas, which is good, otherwise this would have been a really weird and short talk. The next day I arrived back and I decided if somebody else can go in a swing dress to this conference, forget about practicality. This is how I feel good. This is what I'm wearing. So I was there, full circle dress, petticoat, the lot. I'm walking from the car park to the cinema. I had somebody come up behind me and tap me on the shoulder. And they said, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I've just got to say, you gave a fantastic session yesterday. Thank you. I know exactly who you mean. Sorry, it's not me, but I'll pass it on for you. So I got into the room, into the conference, and I sent a tweet to Jessica passing on this compliment. And a few minutes later, she tweeted back, "That's awesome. I'm just in jeans today because I only brought one dress for this conference, but I can't wait to see what your outfit's like. Gonna look for you at breakfast." And she did find me at breakfast. And we started talking again about 50s outfits, about tech, about anxiety, and also speaking. Had I ever thought about giving it a try? She thought with the passion I spoke about the topics we were talking about, it'd translate really well to speaking to a group of people. No. I attend conferences. I don't speak at them. Nobody's going to want to listen to anything I've got to say anyway. Well, it turns out she helps organize this fantastic conference in Sweden called Svetug. I apologize if I butchered that word. And their call for speakers was open. And she suggested, submit a talk. The worst that can happen is you don't get picked. And if you get picked, the conference is in Sweden. It's a different country. You know nobody. Even if it goes really, really badly, you never have to see these people ever again in your life. So I said, okay, I'm going to submit. We chatted a bit longer, and then it was time for the day's sessions. It was not the breakfast I was expecting. When I got the link for the call for speakers from Jessica, first thing I had to do was try and think, what am I going to talk about? And instantly, my anxiety kicked in. I'm right back at that place. Who am I to think anyone's going to be interested in anything I've got to say? I can't talk at a conference. I don't have the expertise. This is impossible. I can't do it. But at the same time, by telling somebody I'm going to do something, my head makes a commitment, even if it's not really there. And not doing so also triggered anxiety. So I'm kind of in trouble both ways. Doesn't matter what I do here, I've just racked up yet another personal failure. And at that point, I knew what I could talk about. something I can believe in about myself. My failures, I can see them well enough. I can look back at some of the experiments that we've been doing in the office and what went wrong from them. What did I learn from them? How did other people react to them? And I thought, this is also something that I can give, and I can't possibly get it wrong. I can't give bad information here because it's my story. There is no right or wrong. It's just what happened and what I learned from it. I made an abstract. I tried to come up with a title that wasn't boring. I failed, and I submitted. Yet again, this is the end of it. I'm never going to get selected. And as time went on, I did hear nothing back, and I assumed I've not been selected. Que sera, sera. Maybe it would have been nice to speak at a conference, but it's meant to be. Until, on a short break, with my in-laws, sitting in a restaurant waiting for our food to arrive, surrounded by lots of people, my phone went bing. I checked it. I'd been selected. I let out a little bit of a squeal. I was smiling from ear to ear, kind of as I am now, just remembering it. And I floated for the rest of that evening. The next day, though, the intonation changed slightly. It kind of went to, I've been selected. I've got to write something now. And doing that was really hard. I started by spending hours looking at an empty or near empty Word document, just jotting a few things down, but being overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead of me. I don't know if you know, but to fill a 50-minute session with talking takes about 5,000 words. In context, that's about 11 pages of A4 in Arial font at size 11. Before I write my talk, I've got to figure out how I'm going to write my talk. As well as being a software developer, I'm also a Scrum Master. And I thought, well, I'm trying to help my team do experimentation. And that's what the talk's about, the failures with the experimentation. How can I use this knowledge to write my talk itself? And I had about 12 weeks to go before the conference. So I thought, let's plan weekly sprints and goals. And try and figure out how I can ensure that at the end of every sprint, I have a potentially releasable product. That is, a talk that I can give, even if it's not perfect. Now, I used Azure DevOps to plan my writing because it's a tool I use in my daily job. And I decided that rather than trying to work on a section until it was complete, as I was trying to do originally, I needed to make sure that I just wrote my outline and my full talk and then refined it iteration after iteration after iteration. So it kind of went sprint 1, the outline. The first thing I had to do is move the notes that I had out of my Word document and put them into a wiki inside of Azure DevOps. I don't know why, but that really calmed me down over an empty Word document. I figured out the sections of the talk I wanted to give. What was going to be the construction there and the flow of it. I added some rough notes to each one to make sure I had a rough idea of what I wanted to say or the things I wanted to talk about at least. I make sure I also added one for the intro, my intro, and the closing. It's not a talk yet. This is the only sprint where I didn't end up with a talk, but at least I've got an outline. Sprint 2, flesh it out. This pass turned each of those outlines into a full and complete section, making sure that each one had all the details that I wanted to talk about, and also counting the words and making sure that I've got that magical 5,000 number so I can do a 50-minute talk. I didn't have time to practice this yet, but I've got a talk. and it's a talk that I can give. Sprints 3 through 5, I just refined this. The first thing I had to do is practice it. And inside of 5 minutes, I was so thoroughly bored. This isn't good. If I'm boring myself, my poor audience. So I did a good deal of Googling. I literally Googled how to make a talk introduction not boring. I worked my way through a number of videos I found there, and I set about changing my talk accordingly. First thing I did is get rid of my personal introduction from the start of the talk. As I said at the start of this talk, it's something I try not to do. Rather, I move the introduction to the story right to the start. I tried to make sure that I could set the stage for the connecting arc of the rest of the story, and tried to give a little bit of an indication about what people would get from the session, why they should be interested. Then I did a few words about me, as short as I thought I could get away with, about the same as I did in this talk. And then I looked at my 3 main sections, and they were kind of mini stories that all joined together. And finally, I finished with a little bit of takeaway. Now, at the end of each sprint, I had a talk that I wasn't happy with, but I could give it, and I think it would work. And as I say, I just refined it, going over the talk, figuring out where it was too disjointed, where it was confusing, where I was tripping over my own notes. Didn't have a presentation yet to put on the screen behind me, but I've got a talk, and I can give it quite happy. Can only get better from here. Sprint 6, add that presentation. Now, at this point, I'm happy with my talk, like I say, but I kind of thought me just standing talking without any slides, it's going to be boring. So I need to make a presentation for it. I moved all of my notes out of the Markdown files and into the notes section of PowerPoint, and I started to put loads of words on the screen as I went. And at that point, Jessica sent me an amazing video, how to avoid death by PowerPoint. And if scheduled tweets have done their thing on my timeline, you should see it now, a link to it. I watched it a couple of times, and then I redid a lot of my slides. I removed almost all of the words. They weren't important to my story. I made the theme darker to make sure that it wasn't this huge, brightly contrasted thing in the middle of the room that everybody's drawn to. Tried to make sure that I had more contrast than the screen, and try and make sure that I am the presentation, and that's just my helper notes. Thereafter, I've got about 5 weeks until the conference now. I stopped with the sprints because, you know what? I'm actually done. All I want to do is just practice to the point where I can give the talk almost without reading my notes. And again, occasionally, a few bits of refining as I notice that this bit really doesn't go as I want it to. And then, time to go to Stockholm. Arriving there, I was so totally overwhelmed again. I do not travel well. I'm afraid of flying. I have this huge fear of getting lost in a place. The general fear of the place itself because I'm all by myself. And that pressing fear of going into a speaker dinner that evening full of people who, you know, deserve to be at that conference, unlike me, and the conference itself the next day. The first one, getting lost, really quickly. I managed that one without a problem. I was so stressed when I got off the train in the middle of Stockholm that I couldn't find the entrance to the subway. Google really didn't help me because it simply said I needed to magically teleport into the middle of the building on the other side of the road. What it neglected to say is the entrance is on this side of the road and there's a tunnel leading to it. I eventually worked up the courage to ask somebody for directions, and I found the train, got on the right one, going in the right direction, and I was counting the stops, looking like the complete tourist to make sure that I didn't get lost and got out at the right place. That almost happened. I did get out at the right station, but it had more than one exit, and I didn't realize this. So rather than getting out of the station, say 50 to 60 meters, literally from the hotel where we were staying, I got out a quarter of a kilometer away in ice and snow and slush with 17 kilograms of luggage, because when I travel, I stress, and when I stress, I pack. Up and down hills, some icy stairs to get down to the hotel, which I'd question the safety in the middle of the summer, let alone when it's an ice rink in the middle of winter. But eventually I found it. I checked in. I collapsed on the bed and tried to figure out where I needed to be that evening for the speaker dinner and the next day for the conference. And then the next day came. Now, against my expectations, I was actually reasonably relaxed on the day of the talk. I spent the morning in sessions watching other people give their talks, some fantastic topics and talks. It was an awesome experience. And when the hallway got too much, I took advantage of the fact that there was a speaker lounge and I was allowed to use it. That gave my anxiety such a rest, having that refuge that I could jump into when it got too much. The session before mine, I also spent in the speaker room, going over my presentation many, many more times to find that bit that obviously I've missed the 100 times I've been through it, and I know I'm going to find when I'm in the middle of giving my talk. And getting encouragement from the other speakers who, I've got to say, in the 2 years I've been doing this, the speaker community, they are such a friendly, helpful group of people, and I am so pleased I've gotten to know them. And then it was time for the talk. I arrived at the room just as the previous session finished, because like I say, I'd rather be early than late. I've got 15 minutes to try and calm myself down, get my laptop plugged in, check the slides are visible from the back of the room, get wired up, test the microphone, check my clicker does what it's supposed to do, and then wait. Is anybody going to come to this session? Or am I going to be foolishly standing in front of an empty room? 10 minutes to go. The first person arrived. Through the stress and fear, I somehow managed to make a joke that, hey, at least you're here. I'm not going to be doing this to an empty room anymore. Thank you. That kind of got a smile, and we engaged in a little bit of a chat. 5 minutes to go, about 25% of the seats were taken. The room's a quarter full. This is going to be okay. I can do this. It's not empty. It's not too full. It's not too intimidating. And a number of speakers from the speaker lounge had also joined and were giving me encouragement again. I did say they're awesome people. 3 minutes to go, the room's getting half full. The nerves are starting to climb. 1 minute to go, the room is full. The nerves are through the roof. It might not have been the biggest room at the conference, but it's nerve-wracking to see it absolutely solid. I'm standing there and I'm suddenly back at the, who do I think I am that I can give a talk to all of these people? And then the cue came. It was time to start. Deep breaths. With very shaky hands, fumble with the microphone to turn it on, and then, good afternoon, everybody. It is amazing to see so many people here today. And with that sentence, all the nerves fell away. Gone. I was still wobbly as a newborn giraffe, always fun in heels. But it was from the remaining energy from the stress. The stress itself was gone. I found that I loved giving this talk. Seeing one or two people in the audience smile, nod along, otherwise show understanding of what I'm saying, it just added to the energy I was getting and drove me onwards until I got the 10-minute warning for the talk, with 20 minutes left on my slide. Again, eek. I had to spend those 10 minutes both trying to talk, trying to look unflustered, and trying to pick out the points that I could drop without ruining the flow of the story. Thankfully, I think I got away with it. I managed to end right on time. With a little bit of applause, I fell back down to the real world. I had a chat with a few people afterwards, some attendees, some speakers. And now I can relax for the last day and a half of the conference. My first talk was done. And apparently, I did a half-decent job of it. Now, if you would have told me in 2018 that in a couple of years, I would be giving regular talks on different topics, technical and non-technical, live demos, answering questions from the audience, however badly I might manage that last one, I would have not laughed. I'd have been too scared to laugh, but I certainly wouldn't have believed you. And yet here I am. I'm a different person than I was then. And I suppose it's a bit weird. I give talks that I hope try and help people change and try and help them experiment both with how they build software and the tools that they use to build software. It was foolish not to consider that doing so would change me. I missed that one. So, should there be anybody watching this today thinking of trying this, but being too petrified or frozen with imposter syndrome, I've got some advice. It's advice with a proviso. This worked for me. It may or may not work for you. Firstly, of course, go for it. If you want to give a talk, figure out what area you want to talk about and see if you can find a local meetup that specializes in it. This is really daunting to do. But trust me, meetups are always on the lookout for speakers. And they may be able to give you some advice to help you get started as a new speaker. If there's a conference that you really think, I'd love to be able to speak at that, submit a presentation, see what happens. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. Of course, if you're going to do this, you are going to need a couple of things ready, certainly for the conference. First is an abstract. What are you going to talk about? I'm going to be honest here. I hate writing abstracts. I can write a talk easier than I can write an abstract. Best advice I can give to you here is have a look at conferences that you've been to that you've enjoyed. Have a look at the sessions which, again, you visited and stood out for you. And have a look what the abstracts are like. See if there's something there that it has a style that appeals to you, and see if you can use it as inspiration for your own. Secondly, you're going to need a bio. I'm sorry, if abstracts are bad, bios are worse. As somebody who seriously just wants to fade into the background as much as possible, having to write something that makes it sound like you deserve and belong at a conference is so confronting. Again, have a look at the conferences you've been to. Have a look at the bios that speak to you. See if there's anything there that can inspire you. Know that in the 2 years of doing this, I have yet to meet a speaker that enjoys writing their bio. And also know that, yeah, if your bio sounds like you're showing off just a little bit, chances are you're doing okay. All the bios I've had to write have all been completely factual. My anxiety won't let me exaggerate, and it certainly won't let me lie on one. But in doing so, it's also allowed me to actually see all the things that I have actually done in my career. And whilst it's confronting, and it still makes me feel big-headed to write it down, it is actually a nice thing sometimes. Now, if you need to do both of these, I can really recommend the Global Diversity CFP Day, which again, hey, it's on this screen. Awesome. Going there last year really helped me. I still don't like doing these things and I still struggle, but I'm way better than I was. Now, this should have been tomorrow, so I was going to say it's a little bit of a rush to get registered, but at least it's all online so you can do this. But it's been rescheduled till February the 20th, so you've got some time to register and to make it. Then you've got to write your talk. Again, pick a topic that makes you comfortable, same as with the abstract. I assume it's going to be the same topic. Remember that you are not there to be the world expert on the topic you're presenting. You do not need to be the world expert. You just need to pass on your knowledge and your learnings. And if you're a beginner, that's still invaluable to other people that are about to start the same journey that you're on. Continuing that idea, if you want to learn something new and you feel up to it, write a talk about it, because nothing forces you to learn something like writing a talk about it. I have learned so many topics in the last couple of years by doing this. And of course, you're going to need to have to figure out how you're going to write your talk. Are you going to do what I did? Try and write the whole thing reasonably quickly, very roughly, and then practice and refine and change and practice, refine? Are you just going to dump the whole thing into a word processor and be done with it? Are you going to write each section until it's totally polished before moving on with the next one? There are so many ways of doing this. Experiment, see which one works for you. There is no right answer here. And of course, you're going to have to give the talk. I still get stage fright 2 years on. Before giving this talk, my hands were clammy and I was wobbly on my feet. Most speakers I know also still get stage fright, as do most of the musicians I know. But something that's been said to me once really helps to remember. These people have given up their time to listen to you. They want to learn something. They are there hoping to get something back. That means, for the most part, they want you to succeed. They're not there to see you fail. They are there to see you succeed. So when you make your mistake, ignore it, continue. Chances are your audience didn't even notice. If they did, and I gave a demo once, I forgot the closing tab for a closing HTML tag, and I couldn't figure out why my code wasn't working. Oops. Somebody from the audience actually had to yell out to me and tell me what it was. Make a joke about it. It's a deliberate mistake. I just want to make sure that you're all paying attention. Engage with your audience. Let them know that you're just a person as well. My biggest piece of advice, though, is have some kind of presentation timer. Don't rely on that moderator to keep you in time. That first talk, I use a presentation timer inside of PowerPoint. And that works great when you're practicing because the screen's right there in front of you. When you're on a podium and your laptop's 2 meters that way, it's not quite so good. So what I do now is have something on my phone, and I link that to various notes in my speaker notes that lets me know whether or not I'm behind and I've got to talk just a little bit quicker. Maybe I have to skip a couple of sections that I put in there in case I have time. Or whether or not I'm that far ahead that I really need to relax. I need to slow down and I need to get back onto the right pace and make sure I'm not rushing and losing people. Finally, I started this story talking about my mental health. In 2018, I was not in a good place. I was full of anxiety. I had zero self-confidence. And honestly, all I can remember from that time is a profound empty feeling which just took over everything. Of course, therapy has helped me tremendously. But also giving talks, writing them, allowing myself to see what I can do have all complemented that therapy. And it's the joint thing that's got me to where I am today. I still struggle. I'm still in therapy. I'm going to be there for a while yet, probably. And I still really have to push myself to communicate with the outside world. And at this point, I want to apologize to any organizer of any conference I've spoken at, because sometimes emails are just an impossible thing that I can't do. But I also get energy back from the talks. Giving talks, getting that energy back, seeing what I can do. It's the reason why I allowed myself to change jobs last year, not be stuck with a whoever is going to hire me mentality that I had before. It's the reason why I've learned so many new technologies over the last 2 years. And it's the reason why, even though it takes up so much time for me to do it to my standard, I get so much energy out trying to perfect it as much as I can. And I can heartily recommend it to anybody who is even remotely interested in trying it for themselves. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. So that's also for everyone who's watching right now. I said it at the beginning, but we're also always calling for speakers at SheSharp ourselves. So if you want to have a hand at trying at being part of a panel, for example, like you don't want to have your own presentation, please get in touch with us, because we do have opportunities to do so and to basically break into the, we'll say, like speaking world, as Stacy has, and that she's so lovingly described for us today. We do have one question from Stephanie. With a lot of conference and meetups moving to a virtual platform over the last year, have you had to make any changes to your mindset and to the way you prepare your talks virtually versus in person?
The mindset's had to change. It's, as I said in my talk, what I really enjoyed from the in-life conferences was being able to catch the eye of somebody in the audience and just seeing that one person smile and know that you've got one person on board with you. And when you're doing it remotely, I'm looking at myself in the back of my webcam with the screen popped up, and that's quite a different experience. And what I find works for me, I know other speakers that put googly eyes on their cameras, so they're looking at a face nearly. I've tried that. That doesn't work for me. I just have to try and take my mind back to those first few sessions that I did and just try and imagine the people out there. But it's a lot harder to get going. There is one good side. Obviously, you always have some people in the audience who are maybe not quite as interested in the topic you're talking about as you thought. And if that person catches your eye, that's devastating. And obviously, you don't have that when you're doing it from home, because all you've got is the camera staring at you. And whilst it's intimidating, it's neither bored nor happy. So it's kind of more of a neutral feature.
Yeah, I can empathize with that. I used to do theater, and I remember one time there was someone in the front row who fell asleep. So that's not great. So virtually, yeah, you would never know if someone was sleeping at their computer if you were presenting. And so we have 3 minutes. I have another question. Basically, it sounds like you've had to confront a lot of anxieties. You're speaking really openly about your mental health and so forth. Where does your motivation come from in order to tackle all of these? Because a lot of people are really like sort of crippled by their fears. But where did it come from for you?
I think it pretty much came from once I started on the track to get better. It's still quite terrifying to actually talk about the mental health and talk about the issues that you're going with. And you always have the people that either answer it with, oh, just smile, you just need to smile more and then you'll be happy, or just do it. What's the worst that can happen? You know, no, trust me, you don't need to say what's the worst going to happen because my head's telling me. And I kind of reached the point near to the end of last year where I just decided that I'm at the point where I can be open about it now. I feel healthy enough to be open about it now, even though it still chokes me up. And if I can do even a tiny smidging to help reduce the taboo talking about mental health, then hopefully it can help somebody else get started on that path to recovery. Because it's something that people, either refuse to talk about, scared to talk about, and you still get too many people that are, will you stop talking about your mental health? Are you trying to get us to feel sorry for you? It's like, no, not really, but this is a conversation that we need to have. And it's something which I hope in the future is, as everybody says, if you broke your arm, nobody questions that you can't do stuff with your hand. And yeah, it's, if you have something in your mind which is causing you problems, then yeah, it's invisible. People can't see it, but the problem is just as real as if you can't use your hand.
For sure. Great. So I hope everyone had a great session. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm also super inspired by you, Stacey, to, exactly tackle those things that you were just talking about. And indeed, we should, especially during a pandemic, where we're all suffering from some sort of health problem one way or another. It's super important for us to not hide behind things and to get it out in the open. And like you said, face your fears head on. Great. So we'll talk to you hopefully at the happy hour. Oh, actually, you're on the panel later as well. So
I'm on the panel later on today. Yeah.
Yes, if you want to hear more from Stacey, she'll be on the panel, and of course, we'll have the happy hour where she'll hopefully join us as well. Thank you so much. We have another 15-minute break, and before our next Her Story with Rita van Rijswijk, sorry. And so get your bio breaks in, and we will see you shortly. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from our break for our Her Story Part 3. Another reminder to all of those who have just joined us or who forgot, please use the chat function to say hi and tell us where you're joining from. If you're using the chat function, you can also use it to ask questions during the session and make any comments. For example, if you are having trouble with the chat function, please go to YouTube or one of our other streams in order to be able to interact. And we'll also be moderating those comments as well. Last but not least, her story of the day. I'm proud to present Rachel van Rijswijk, who's not only an engineering manager at XP Group, but is also a fierce advocate for diversity and inclusion on tech teams. She actively hires for diversity and isn't afraid to go down roads less traveled to do the right thing. Her story is super inspiring, and we all hope that the audience for this session will come away charged with energy to have the same kind of impact that she does in her business. Here's her story.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Well, a couple of years ago, I did something really brave, or maybe some may say something really stupid. I made a career switch to work in tech and in an environment dominated by white men. So I gave up my safe space to work on something I had never done before, write code. I'm Varta. I'm an engineering manager at a fintech company called XP, where I build diverse and inclusive development teams in Amsterdam since September last year. So it's a super new challenge and experience for both the company and myself. So here's my story on how I got into tech and how I am building these teams. So my first computer was a secondhand Commodore 128. I was 12 years old at the time, and honestly, it wasn't my computer. My father bought it to write books, but he couldn't type. So my brother, who's 2 years younger than I am, and myself, we had to learn how to computer, so we know how to type large documents, right? Well, little did we know that programming was not needed to use just a simple text editor. So anyway, we learned basic programming at our community center. So armed with this new knowledge, we took over every computer we saw in every public place, like museum. And with our amazing hacker skills, we hacked into these computers, opening terminals, writing infinite loops with random texts like, "You have been hacked." So the excitement we felt, like no one ever suspected us because, well, we didn't look like the random hacker. Well, you know the type: dude, hoodie, pimples, lives on cola and pizza. I loved it. Like, I loved playing games on computers with my brother. I loved writing these tiny scripts that did absolutely no harm, but would freak out every non-techie person in that room. Yeah, I was a wild one. So after high school, I had to choose a field of study for my future career, and I was clueless. I didn't know what profession I would love as an adult, and now I was forced to make a decision for the rest of my life. I still liked computers a lot, but I also love taking care of animals. So I thought maybe computer science or medical school to become a vet. But then again, I had no role models to look up to either. So I entered this career orientation program for all the kids who had no clear direction about their career paths. And this was based on their education level. You just fill in some questions and you would get career advice. And based on my answers, my career advice was, true story, zookeeper. Zookeeper, yeah. So what happened to computer-related jobs? When I asked them about it, they actually advised against it. Are you sure? Because, well, all boys there, and you like fluffy animals, right? And also math, yeah, that's not your strongest subject on school, so it's going to be super hard, like super hard. Well, that's it. I felt disillusioned toward the result and decided to enroll into business school. So these are just examples of challenges I faced. Lack of role models, being actively discouraged to become an engineer, and feeling disillusioned. So I'm not here to complain or to raise sympathy. I mean, I've been treated well by people of all races and gender more often than I've not. But women of color experience more challenges than just the examples I just gave, especially when they work or want to work in software engineering. They struggle to fit in after realizing that they were a minority in the engineering workplace. Some feel isolation, others might experience bias, implicit bias even. So here are some interesting statistics. UNESCO published a report about girls and women's education in STEM. So UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And according to their groundbreaking report from 2017, only 35% of STEM students in higher education globally are women. 35%. And differences are observed within STEM disciplines. Of these 35%, only 3% of female students choose the higher education information and communication technologies, the ICT studies, basically. So this gender disparity is kind of alarming, especially as STEM careers are often referred to as job of the futures, driving innovation, social well-being, inclusive growth, and sustainable development. So STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And these statistics are real. I believe it threatens to rob the next generation of all the opportunities that all of us want for all our children, no matter what color or where they come from, right? And I think it also threatens to hold back businesses. D&I, diversity and inclusion, is critical to a company's success as the demographics of countries change. As people from different ethnicities and races move into the tech communities, they also expect to see a workforce that's reflective of its country residents. So fast forward, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm married, 2 kids, and I was founder of a travel agency specialized in winter sports. So we had our own website and a small external dev team who built and maintained the website. And every time when I wanted a small change implemented, it took days, sometimes even weeks. I grew impatient and I decided to learn code myself. I mean, like, how hard can it be, right? So I enrolled in this development bootcamp, this 7 days development bootcamp. And from that point on, I was hooked. I wanted to learn more and I wanted to work in tech. So I started to work for this brand new coding academy that was still in its early startup phase while I learned more about code. One of my tasks was to organize big coding events and monthly meetups, like the still ongoing Amsterdam Ruby meetup, which has grown to almost 2,000 members. And after that, I started working for a SaaS company where I had 2 mentors who taught me the basics of Ruby programming. I love Ruby. And I felt the need, and I felt I needed to learn more. So when my contract ended at the SaaS company, I enrolled at this very immersive, very intense training at a coding academy for 4 months. And thanks to my network, I landed my first job as a developer. I found out later, though, that I wasn't just hired for my coding skills, but also for my soft skills. So because I had experience as an entrepreneur and organizer of events, and most importantly, apparently the company loved my energy and people skills. So that was a nice surprise. Sounds easy, right? Just go ahead, make this career switch and follow your dream. Well, it wasn't that easy. With 2 kids and a household to run on one income while I was studying required some intense planning. But I learned a lot as a developer. Like, I don't look like a developer. I look more like a beautician or marketing person, hairdresser, even heard that one too. Also learned that a lot of men won't take me seriously at tech conferences. Oh, you're attending this talk. Well, it's very technical, you know. Or you're a developer, right? So what's your stack? And then they would test me on it, on my knowledge of this stack. So this one time, I was waiting to at the conference. I was waiting my turn at the booth, and I was browsing a bit the job openings that were pinned at the wall back at the booth. And this booth lady saw me, and she kindly informed me that they also have other jobs than just the technical ones pinned on the board. Yeah, I ran, obviously. And talking about communities, when I told people about this mini conference, I got questions, mostly from male engineers, about the goal of this summit and why it was necessary to have an event for women only. So first of all, this is not an event for women only. It's a free event and everyone is welcome to attend. Still, the men were not convinced. We don't have a SheSharp event either, right? Why would you need a SheSharp event? Yeah. Well, I've heard this reasoning a lot. I'm also co-organizing the Rails Girls Netherlands events, for example, where we teach women and girls to code for free. And I heard a lot of muttering from men. Mumble, mumble, why are you excluding us? Mumble, bumble. So here's the thing. Years ago, these communities, coding communities also existed with mostly men. And when women attended these community events, they were excluded and they were laughed at. Worst case, these women were harassed and they felt not wanted, not taken seriously. So some of these women decided to create their own communities where women and girls would have a safe place to learn more about programming. And that was a huge success. And not just women and girls, but also other unrepresented groups within tech started to attend these events and create their own communities. And they were getting excited about programming, and these communities grew. So why don't we have these male tech events like SheSharp? Because all the tech events are already dominated by men. And these events are not about excluding people. It's about finding ways to be accepted and creating a safe environment where you can actually be yourself. It's about creating more diversity within communities in tech. So today, I'm an engineering manager at a fintech company. And one of my tasks is building and growing diverse and inclusive development teams. And with diversity, I don't mean white women. Diversity covers a broad spectrum. Diversity discussions have altered the topic by including gender and other issues as well. So the standard is white. A recruiter with a box-ticking mindset can undermine this progress. Like, okay, people, we have a woman, we are diverse. Race is difficult to talk about. Race is one of those topics that makes people feel extremely uncomfortable. But I feel it's important enough to address when you're hiring for diversity. Companies these days want to be colorblind. Researchers have coined this term color blindness to describe a learned behavior where we pretend that we don't notice race. And this concept informs commonly heard comments from woke companies or people. I don't see race, or race doesn't matter. We are all the same. We have the same color blood. Now, color blindness, in my view, doesn't mean there's no racial discrimination and that there's actual fairness. Like, not at all. It doesn't ensure it. So again, color blindness does not ensure that there is no racial discrimination. In my opinion, color blindness is actually very dangerous because it means we are ignoring the problem. All color blindness does is relieve companies from needing to actually address the discomfort and challenges related to racial difference, privilege, power, and disadvantage. Because if people really were equal and the same, then we all would have been treated the same. So, there was this corporate study that said that instead of avoiding race, the really smart organizations actually deal with it head on. They actually recognize that embracing diversity means recognizing all races, including the majority ones, of course. Don't ignore and dismiss people and their stories, but listen to them, observe. You might get new powerful insights. But this can be super hard and very uneasy and very uncomfortable. Now, I also think this is very important so that the next generation really understand that this progress will help them, because they are also expecting us to be great role models, right? And the arguments in favor of diversity are very powerful and scientifically proven evil. For example, these obvious ones. Face recognition systems failed because the algorithm wasn't tested on Asian, African, or Native American peoples. Or, hey, fill in this form. What's your gender? Male? Female? Human? Unknown? Text entity? When your development team makes a mistake. There are also people with 2-letter names who will get an error when filling in their names on a form. But there is so much more than just 2-letter names. You can also, for a fun fact, you can search for falsehood programmers believe about names. You will find this entire list about how we believe names should look like. So you can search for, in your favorite browser, of course, falsehood programmers believe about names. But diverse teams are not all rainbows and kittens. Companies with diverse and inclusive teams complain that they're not getting much return on their investment. They have all these diverse teams, but they're still not successful. So in order to get the benefits, employers must be prepared for and deal with some problems. Diversity does not produce better results automatically overnight through some sort of multicultural magic. It only works if it's managed well, which is actually no different than any other successful team. So there are a couple of challenges here, and I'll just touch on a few of them. So the first challenge would be the cultural difference. In some cultures, it's considered rude to speak up to your manager, and in many countries, especially women, are told to hold their tongues and defer to authority. Managers have to work harder to create an environment where members of silent minorities feel safe to speak up, or at least give them ways to contribute to the collective project. The second one is harder, but maybe even more important. It's about trust. It's crucial that the team trust each other, especially when they have to work together on demanding, strenuous projects. It's human nature to establish trust with people you have a lot in common with, right? So diverse teams have a higher degree of variance in their performance than homogeneous teams. They are more likely to produce truly innovative ideas, but they're also more likely to totally, completely fail. So managers of diverse teams need to work hard at establishing bonds of trust. Not just diverse teams, all teams, but especially diverse teams. They need to set lots of short-term goals so that teams can see the benefits of working together. They also need to recognize that different groups forge trust in different ways. So the Dutch, for instance, we have the most explicit or low context culture there is. And with low context, I mean our conversations assume relatively little intuitive understanding. So we can even be perceived as directive and rude. Japan and other East Asian countries represent the other extreme. But there are many more cultural challenges. And if you're interested, I'd recommend reading this book. It's Culture Map. Oh, can you see it? Yes. Culture Map by Erin Meyer, about different cultures, context on the work floor. So how do you hire for diversity? Companies that want to bring in more diverse employees need to look at their senior leadership and even the recruitment firms they use to help them with that. If the organizations don't understand the communities they're now trying to be part of, then diverse talent isn't understood. Companies need to make sure that this isn't done through panic token hiring. Education is needed for employers when it comes to understanding diversity. And hiring for diversity takes time. I've heard so many hiring managers complain. We really want to hire for diversity, but there's just not a lot of diverse people in there, especially engineering, and most of all, senior engineers. Diverse senior engineers, nowhere to be found. Well, they are here, but you might have to look beyond your current network. So on Twitter, for example, you can check out the hashtag Black Tech Twitter or the hashtag LGBTQ Tech. You can join meetups and you can attend their events, get to know the crowd, get to know the people. And you can also, as a company, sponsor tech meetups who stand for diversity and inclusion, or at least create a safe place for them to join. And check if they have a code of conduct. And there are quite a few out there. I will share them after my talk in this community Slack. It's quite a list. But here are some examples of safe communities. Big thank you to Floor Drees, who helped me with this list. So a couple of examples are PyLadies, Rails Girls, Django Girls, Code Curious, Queer.js, blackgirlscode.org, and so many more. And by sponsoring these events and these communities, you as a company are letting them know and their members know that you support their mission. Still, if you cannot find them, train them. Hire junior developers and train them into becoming the best possible developer they can ever be. The company I work for, XP, recently hired 4 Hack Your Future alumni. I love Hack Your Future. So to quote their tagline, Hack Your Future is a free 7-month web development program for talented refugees and other disadvantaged groups with limited access to education and the labor market. How awesome is that? And we have just started hiring. So here are some tips and some caveats if you're looking for a job in tech. Check out the company's about page. What does the team look like? Do they have a group picture of the teams? Does the company have a diversity and inclusion policy, code of conduct maybe. What are their core values? Can you resonate with them? Don't forget about your soft skills, right? If you're applying, show your personality in your motivation letter. Also during the interview, hiring managers these days don't just focus on tech skills, but they also check if you will fit their team as a person. And look out for red flags. Like, you don't want to be a token hire. Try to find out that the company who hires you is convinced that you are actually the best person for the job, not just because they want to tick some diversity boxes. Oh, woman, tick. Oh, black, tick. Yes, we got another one, people. No. And I know maybe some of you are already or have already been Googling or just search for the about or job page of the company I currently work for. It's in development as we speak. Will be deployed soon because, like I said, we just started in September. But we're on it. So how about all of you who are still considering if they want to go into tech and learn how to code, or maybe you're still there, you are now just starting to learn how to code? How and where do you start and go further? So the coding bootcamps these days are dedicated to teach you as much about coding in very limited time, but some of them can be very expensive too. So you have Codesur, you have Le Wagon, and the Hack Your Future, my favorite. These coding schools provide scholarships, but you have to be resilient and you have to have time. Your life will exist of 7 days a week for 4 months or 7 months, depending on the academy, non-stop learning how to code. It's very immersive. So if a bootcamp is not for you, you can always learn programming yourself. There are several tutorials online. However, I'd very much recommend to find a mentor or a coach. Where? Well, at meetups, for example, or maybe this community Slack. Perhaps the organizers can share a link in the chat for everyone who wants to join this Slack. And you'll find people there who are more than willing to help you or guide you or give you tips. And of course, we have conferences. So the best ones, personally, I find the best ones in real life, because you can expand your network easier. You have real life talks. But on the other hand, these ones, the virtual ones, also offer a nice opportunity for networking. And lastly, if you still have the opportunity to choose your future field of study and you're thinking of STEM, then just go for it. Like, you can do it. We support you. We need you. So just if you were in doubt, it's like, this is a sign. Go for it. Do it. But there's no easy way to learn how to code. Learning how to code is learning how to grow outside your comfort zone. If you're still in doubt, if you're on the right track, feeling a bit of discomfort while learning how to code is part of the deal. Find a role model who inspires you, and they don't have to be a technical person per se. So for me, it was my mother. My mother was and still is a very independent woman. So back in the days, she was the first girl in college to wear trousers and the first woman in the family with a driver's license, and my grandparents' only daughter who went to the city to study children's psychology. So she is my motivator for sure. So how do I see the future? Well, I have 2 teenagers now, and I want them to look at the CTO or a vice president and say, I can be like her. I can be like Kamala Harris. Or they look like me. And I want them to know that anything is possible. So I tell them they can be whatever they want to be, and they can get whatever they want to get. But sometimes it takes time and you have to learn. Education. Sometimes you have to wait. Opportunity. And sometimes you just have to be bold and ask. I was in my 30s when I made the career switch and learned programming. I'm 45 now and I'm building development teams. So you're never too old to learn new things. So in conclusion, what can you do to change the diversity system? Well, be curious. Look around you, observe your environment at work, at school, at home, your network, your inner circle, your friends. Be aware also how many look like you. And also to all you tech hiring managers who want more diversity in their teams, invite people in your professional life who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who don't act like you, and who don't come from where you come from. You might find that they will challenge your assumptions and actually make you grow as a person. You will learn more. You can start maybe by having coffee or lunch with that other team or that other person. You might get powerful new insights from these individuals. Ask questions. Get out of your bubble. So it's a question for all of you. If you work in tech and you have a Twitter account, how many women, trans, non-binary folks in tech do you follow there? So seek role models, learn their stories. So you're always welcome to hit me up when you have questions regarding this topic, diversity, and maybe also about coding and coding bootcamps, or if you're interested in joining my company. You can find me on Twitter at RayTalks or in this community Slack. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Rita. That was so cool. I think it's interesting to hear as well of the stories from your youth, and I mean not saying that you're older, but like things have changed so much, but also not really. There's still a long way to go, which is, with you starting Rails Girls and so forth, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot ahead of us to do. I have a question about insisting on diversity and inclusion. Sometimes, naysayers, they say, oh, it should just be a meritocracy. Whoever's the most qualified should be the one who's hired. How do you navigate that nuance in diversity inclusion? Can you give an example of a time when you were faced with this issue, and how did you deal with it?
So like I also explained a bit, as in what I would do is not just look at the tech skills, but also look at the person. And I'm a real fan of you can train for skills and you can hire for personality. So I look at the person and see if they fit the team, and if they're an asset to the team, we can just look further and see if we can train those tech skills. I mean, it's quote unquote simpler to train for tech skills, and maybe sometimes for this person it may take longer, but they can definitely be an asset to your team because they bring so much more to the table than just this standard stack. So it depends what you find more important for your team, and also for your diversity and your for your diverse teams, basically.
Makes a lot of sense. I was also, when we were having a session before, we were practicing the session actually, so spoiler alert, I already know the ending. But you mentioned an example where you were hiring a consultancy, I believe, or basically an engineering team that you knew very well, but they were all white men. And I thought that was a really great story, if you wouldn't mind sharing that one.
Yeah. Well, it's not that like I said, I really want to have more. I want to have a diverse and an inclusive team, also because the product we sell, the target group, the user group is not just white men. So I want to be, I want our development teams to be reflective of the user group as well, which is basically because it's a fintech company, it's like has to do with money. Everyone pays. So the target group is everyone. And to avoid any blunders that has been done previously by big tech companies, I gave a few examples in my talk without naming names. That can be really bad, like really, really bad. And you can prevent these bad testing decisions by just having a team who is diverse and who can just sort of make sure that the product fits everyone. Like also this really famous, I'm not sure if I can name names, this famous phone. They had like this health app, and they actually, it was all over the news. They forgot to take into account that women have monthly cycles. So that was an issue because the testers were mainly men, and they didn't think of this very important monthly cycle that women have. So they had to have this update, so this health app could be used by everyone.
Like, yeah, excluding 50% of the entire world's population is probably not a great decision, to say the least, especially in any business. There was a question in our chat. I noticed a number of diverse people being hired, but after that, it seems to stop. What's your view and experience on that happening?
And it seems to stop where?
I guess the diverse hiring practices seem to kind of stop. And
oh, okay. I don't have that experience, but as a hiring manager, I would like. So, if diversity inclusion is not just a policy of your company, but also one of the core values, then it shouldn't stop. It should be part of your hiring system. So maybe the company, their leadership, maybe should reconsider their core values and maybe think again of what they feel is important for the company. You know, there are also companies who really value the environment and have core values that are like amazing for the environment and take care of that. Other companies really value diversity and inclusion. So ideally, the hiring of diverse and diverse people shouldn't be an issue. And actually, it takes effort. It takes time, effort, and mostly time, and you have to work for it because you have to look. They're just not like what the hiring manager said. I cannot find them. Well, they are there. You just have to put in some extra effort there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. When we are talking about hiring for diversity, and also, of course, like we'll say improving the pipeline from which people come, and just getting more diverse people into tech, regardless of where they're coming from, and no matter how old they are, no matter how young they are, for example. That being said, what would you have told yourself if you could have, like your younger self?
Geez, if only I could. Yeah, I just would have. I was so discouraged. The thing is, I was only just a teenager, right? So very easily influenced, and there were these grown-ups and they knew better, so they advised against it, and no one actually told me go for it. So if there was just like this only this one person who just told me just skip it, just do it, then maybe I would have reconsidered, and then maybe I would have like skipped the entire business school step and just, I don't know. But no one told me. I was just actively discouraged by the teachers and the people, the advisors around me I had at the time. So there was not, and also there was like a very clear distinction between boys and girls. It was like, okay, of course you like animals. You're a girl, duh. And of course, boys like engineering, they're boys. And the distinction was so clear then. It was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense, maybe even. So I was also brainwashed. But then again, to answer a question, if I could have been just like this voice, then I would have told myself, just don't listen to him, go for it.
And that being said, have you seen it change a lot? I mean, I'm presuming so, but what do you think is like the best way in which things have changed, and how can we kind of also continue along that path, do you think?
How they have changed? Well, there's a lot going on in the world. So I was kind of a bit of anxious to talk about the race part, because people have opinions these days and they're not afraid to tell you. So that was kind of like, for me, sort of, I was a bit hesitant, like, should I talk about this? Should I not? But diversity inclusion is also like racism is kind of, well, not part of it, but it's a problem basically. So I do believe that things are changing. People talk more, and you can, well, I can see more differences between the extremists, and I also try, and that's what I tell people, try to get out of my bubble. So first, I was aware that I was in my bubble, like everyone around me thinks like me. So how can everyone else who does not think like me even think like that? So I stepped out of it, and I tried to listen to other people, and then I found out that, okay, let's forget the extremists. Let's forget them for a while, and let's just talk to the people who just really want to be educated, and they really have questions because they really don't know, and how does this work, and how can I help, and what can I do? So I think that's changing, and in a good way. For the extremists, I don't know. I have no words. I ignore them.
I guess that's the only thing we can really do. I think that's the thing as well, as like a good note to end on, is sort of, I think things are changing. They're changing so rapidly, I think, in some ways, which can sometimes make a lot of noise, especially from the loudest people in each crowd. It's not just the extremists who speak loudly, but also people within our own bubbles as well. But it's always that case where, the loudest people get heard first. You have to kind of dig a little bit to kind of make sure that it's not just noise, and that we're trying to do something collectively for the greater good. Cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was so cool. And indeed, I think it was great for you to bring up the race problem, because it is real. And I think especially in the Netherlands, for a long time, people were like, oh, we don't have that over here. It's an American thing. But we definitely do. I mean, we exist.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially now with the whole thing that's going on in the government in the Netherlands, it's very clear that there's an issue. So hopefully this is like sort of the beginning of the end of that. It's going to be a long road, I feel, but thank you so much for your contribution and your impact, because it sounds like you're smashing it out of the park.
Oh, thank you for having me, Emily.
Thank you so much. For the rest of us, we have a 5-minute break, I believe, until our next panel, which is on practical advice for self-advocacy, or advocacy in general. So please see all of you back here in about 5 minutes at 5:50. And we're back. As we switch gears to the end of the program today, unfortunately, we'd like to kick off the discussion with this panel on advocacy and self-advocacy. One of the most important skills that you could have as a woman, or anybody actually in any industry. It's always great to know how to advocate for yourself. We'll be chatting about how to practice advocacy in your daily work and how to overcome challenges in this practice. Dalia Spasova, who manages community programs at Elastic, there she is. She will be moderating the discussion. Dalia has a bevy of experience in fostering communities around the world around issues similar to ones we've been speaking about today. Take it away, Dalia.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the event so far. And since we're towards the end of it, we thought it would be a great idea to wrap it up in a more casual, fun, maybe a bit more practical way. And hopefully now we can all have a very nice discussion around one super interesting and popular topic nowadays. Maybe also enjoy a glass of wine or two since the happy hour is coming as well. Well, all right, let me start by introducing myself then. My name is Dalia and I work on the community team in Elastic. I am born in Bulgaria, but I've been living in Amsterdam for the past 7.5 years. I'm actually moving to London next month. So yeah, as you can see, I love traveling. I love experiencing new things. I used to swim professionally before. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about myself. And before we are joined by the rest of the panel here, I wanted to give a little bit introduction about Elastic. If some of you are maybe not familiar with it, which I hope all of you know what Elastic is. Elastic is a distributed company with elasticians all around the globe. And it was founded in 2012. And I hope everyone knows that Elastic is a search company, which is built freely and openly. We offer 3 solutions for enterprise search, observability, and security. And that's kind of like a really short introduction. But one thing that I really want to mention is one of the things I really like about Elastic and about working there is that we always encourage teamwork, supporting one another, or simply just sharing resources among ourselves. Which directly brings me into the topic that we're here to discuss today, self-advocacy or advocacy in general. And what is self-advocacy? I actually did plenty of research before today, and all of the research that I found has some things in common, which are, so self-advocacy is basically learning how to speak up for yourself, making your own decisions about your own life, learning how to get information, finding out who will support you, or knowing your rights and responsibilities. And so basically, in a nutshell, how to support yourself in the best way possible. And why is self-advocacy important nowadays? It's important so that you have the knowledge needed to succeed, and you're given the chance to participate in decisions that are made about your life. And then advocating for others, that's also a very interesting topic. That practically means supporting and helping others so they can succeed. Giving the resources they need. So today we're here and we're joined by a few awesome people. So I would like to kindly ask them to introduce themselves before we begin. If they can all say their names and where they're from, a little bit introduction about themselves, please. Awesome. Hi, ladies. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
So who would like to kick it in to introduce himself?
I'll go first, if that's okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I work with Dalia on the community team at Elastic. I've been there for about 4 years. I'm usually based in London, UK, but currently working from my family's home in Germany, where I'm from. In my free time, I'm a Python Software Foundation Board of Directors member, and I also run PyLadies London. And a fun fact about me, I actually have a degree in English and Catholic theology. I think sometimes people get a little bit shocked when I say that, but I think it shows that everyone has a different journey, and even if you have a non-traditional background, you can still end up in technology one point or another.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Anna. Stacy?
Yeah, hi, I'm Stacey Cashmore. I am Tech Explorer DevOps for Omniplan in Amsterdam, which is a title I adore because it says so much and yet at the same time, absolutely nothing about what I do, which gives me a lot of free range in how I handle my days. I've been coding since the mid-1990s. I love helping other people improve on what they're doing and learning new things. And I think a fun fact about me is I am truly and totally addicted to Lego, and there is not enough sets in the world to buy.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Didn't expect that. Nice, nice. Thank you. And Suzanne?
That is a real dedication to Lego then.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Susanne Daniels. I live in the Netherlands. I work at Microsoft as a developer product marketing manager, which basically comes down to doing stuff with developers, trying to, organize events and hackathons and that sort of things. Originally I started out a long time ago as developer. So yeah, there you have it. A fun fact about me. Well, the thing is, people always wanted to let me ski somehow, and the most safest thing one can do if you have fears is do it inside. And so after a long talking session, people put me on the lift going upstairs, and it was a belt, like a rubber belt, and I stand on that with my skis, and I go up like a few meters, and then suddenly it starts slipping and I go backwards and just fall back. So I have a bit of an issue with skiing.
Okay, that was very unusual.
Yeah, it's a fun fact. Yeah.
Oh my God, thank you for sharing though. It is funny. Are you skiing? You didn't ski afterwards, no?
No, it is like really, really like terrible that people trying to help you get over your fear. Well, and you get this experience out of their well-meant intentions, of course. But.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. Well, let's go into the questions then. I will have like a few questions that I want to ask myself, but then let's open it also to the rest of the public, whoever wants to ask or participate in the discussion. So the first question I wanted to ask, whoever wants to answer it, is if we talk about self-advocacy, maybe someone can tell me how exactly do you practice it at work, and maybe you can give some examples which you think all of us can find useful and kind of help us. I think Emily was also supposed to join us for this discussion, or maybe not.
Not then I can maybe take a first step at it.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So I think self-advocacy is hard for me. I think we all are kind of bad about like talking about each other and promoting ourselves. At least I'm bad at it. I don't like talking about myself. I'd much rather talk about other people. And so a tip that my old manager gave me is maybe team up with another member on your team, another woman in tech, another person from an underrepresented background, and kind of try to promote each other, like push each other up. Like, for example, we have a Slack in Elastic, and I just took a screenshot of this, and I gave a shout out to Dahlia. So that's something for organizing this panel. So I think that's something that doesn't feel as awkward as talking about yourself, but it makes a huge difference. And you kind of help yourself, but you also help someone else out at the same time.
Oh, thank you, Anna. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. Do you girls want to share as well, or?
Yeah, I totally recognize it's very weird, at least to me, to be promoting what I deem like, well, I did my job, and I wish somebody looked at this. And eventually, I just started sending it out because I think it's sometimes difficult to get contact with somebody. At least for me, that is. So I just put it in like a newsletter thingy. Look, this is what I did. And I started to send it out, and very uncomfortably sending it out to the people I think I really appreciate their feedback, and I think it might be valuable for me. So I started doing that. And in the beginning, it felt really weird, but suddenly, the responses came in, and now it really, it helps me a lot to get the feedback or questions. So that's how I started to share what I actually do.
Okay, great. Stacy, do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like Anna said, it's something that I struggle with so much. And for me, it started inside my head. Before I could actually start to do self-advocacy to other people, I had to accept it myself that I was worth doing that for, and that I had things that was worth advocating for. And I think that is a really hard thing to do. But it's kind of needed before you can really get into it. I think the whole confidence fake it before you make it kind of thing. I fall down here. I can't do this without having it first. So the first step for me is really getting it into my head and looking at what I've done and accept that it's good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think also, like, before we show ourselves like to others, like publicly, we need to accept and to admit that we deserve, to the support, the praise, or whatever it is. But I totally agree with you. Yeah, we actually have two questions from the audience. Let's go ahead and answer them. I'm currently on my tech journey. I sometimes feel that I'm not progressing quick enough, and I found that I'm comparing myself to others. What tips can you give us to stay motivated? Do you also think that in case of who you know what, not what you know, to get your first job in tech? Thank you, ladies. If anyone volunteer to answer?
I will give this one a go. I think to get to the end of it first, I'm afraid sometimes, who you know has a bigger impact than what you know, and that sucks. That's really a horrible thing to admit. And if I look back into my career, I was really lucky in the 90s. I did what's called a sandwich university course in the UK. And that's meant that my third year was actually spent in industry. My university found me a job, and they managed to find one that was a real job. It's on the sandwich courses, you've got a very good chance of either getting just a fake job that's nothing, or you actually do something. And I was lucky enough to fall into the second camp. So by the time I left, I had experience that I could use. But if I hadn't have had that experience in the 90s, I don't know how I would have started. So it's that bit is really hard to do. I think these days, if you are learning and you want to try and stop comparing yourself to other people, which is so hard, make yourself a checklist of what you want to learn, and really physically on paper, put it in an application, make sure there's a checkbox next to it, so that when you've reached that point, you can go, tick, I've done that. Get that dopamine hit and allow yourself to experience it, and then move on. And in a world where we have Twitter, all the other social media places that we get to, the meetups, which are now all online, speak about it. It's let people know, shout on Twitter what you're doing. Feels horrible. I still don't like doing it, but it's useful to do. Let the world know that you're doing this and show the world. And yeah, it's the things you're doing, put it out there. It's it can help. It can help. It doesn't solve the problem, but it can help.
No, you're right. I think this, when the checklist totally helps you stay motivated, right? You reach one task and then the next one, and then you write a new one. So yeah. Anyone else? Any ideas? Suzanne?
Yeah, I'd like to reply to the whole, comparing to others. This is pitfall I'm so familiar with. And what I think what really helps me is just to look at what I accomplished, and try to find my own superpowers and not compare what another does on a certain topic or having certain knowledge around something, but gaining my own and finding my own superpowers there. So, you can have a totally different perspective on the things that somebody else knows or does. And it helps. It always helps me to celebrate what I did. And I think what Stacy said, put it on Twitter. Well, I already am happy that I share some stuff internally to my colleagues. But maybe that's a good thing to celebrate it and celebrate it with others and not only with yourself. So I'm gonna think about that as well.
Yeah, agreed. And it's only in our nature to compare ourselves to others. Everyone does it. It's inevitable. But also we need to realize that there will always be someone who does stuff better than us. It's just the way it is. But also at the same time, each one of us has something that these people don't. So, we should try to focus on those things. And for me, that's what helps me stay motivated. I know I'm not the best in many things, but I also have my strong suits in other areas. So, that's what helps me to stay motivated. It's very hard sometimes, but it works for me. We also have another very interesting question. Which systems or tools do you use to regularly keep track of your accomplishments? Anna, maybe you can share with the rest how you keep your Trello board, because I found it really nice. And for example, I can't motivate myself to always write those things, but it just works for you. So I think it's super cool.
Thank you. I was hoping you would give that one to me. Yeah, you can tell that we work together, so we know a little bit about each other. So I do two things. I'm a really big fan of Trello. Trello is a project management tool similar to Asana. And what I started a few years ago is I created a positivity Trello board. And still to this day, I take screenshots of nice things people say about me or anything that makes me smile. I create a Trello card and I put that in my Trello positivity board. And then whenever I have a rainy day or I have one of those days where I feel like I'm not doing enough, I'm not reaching my goals, I look at that and it gives me a reminder that's not the case. And something I started doing about a year ago is there is a thing called a 1 line a day journal. It goes for 5 years. And so every day before bed, I force myself to write down one thing that was good that day, because I believe that even during pandemics and during really bad days, things where you maybe didn't accomplish so much, there's still something you can think of that went well. And then I write down just 1 line. And I'm in my 2nd year now, so I get to look back and see what did I write on January 22nd of last year. And I think it's really nice. And also to the point of the last question, I think I try to only compare myself to a past Anna. So I think it's a nice way to see where was I last year and where am I now.
Nice, great, thank you. I wish I had the motivation to do something like that. And Stacy, Suzanne, do you do anything to track kind of your accomplishments throughout time?
I use a bullet journal type thing. So I use Nirvana, which is based on the Getting Things Done book. And if I have a personal project that I want to do, then I will put it in there and list the steps I've got to take for all of the talks that I write. That's all put in there. And yeah, it's just tick, 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 and allow yourself to look back and go, wow, it's like, I did actually accomplish something. I did it.
Yeah, that ticking part is great. And Suzanne, what about you?
I use Azure DevOps. I have a board there with an immense backlog, which is my pitfall mostly. But I keep track of all the things I would like to do and track that. So everything is linked. Those are epics. I just try to work through it. And a lot of day-to-day stuff gets in there, so I try to filter that. I'm not good at that, but at least when I want to know, am I on track? Have I done like the things I really wanted to do that bring me value, I look there. And it's not something I check weekly, my progress, but at least every few weeks, or when I feel down, I just go there and look. Okay, I get this.
Okay. Well, it's nice that everyone is kind of having some tool that you guys use. It's really cool. I'm going to get one as well. And I think I'm going to do the Trello board. It looks very pretty. Or maybe I'm going to try what Stacy's. Let's see. We'll see. We got another really interesting question from the audience. Have you ever received negative pushback when you're advocating for yourself? And how did you handle that situation? That's an interesting one. I'm also trying to think.
Yeah, I can go answer that from my side.
Yeah.
Yes, immensely, a lot of pushback, and there's no silver bullet on how to cope with that. So sometimes it is a time to reflect upon yourself. Why is this feedback coming? What kind of feedback is this? Is there, and from there decide what you need to do. And oftentimes it is just a matter of, for instance, you have a great idea, a great concept. You try to advocate for your idea, for your thing you want to achieve, and then you get the pushback, and it can be many things. Sometimes it's good to just then, if you can't find anything, just let it go for a little while. Think again, think it through. What is this feedback? How can I use this for the positivity? Because the risk is that when you get pushback, you take it personal, and oftentimes it is not. So stop, pause, look at the comments, rethink your plan, and reintroduce it. Maybe even change the name of your initiative or anything. But try to use the comments and be back better.
Okay, that makes sense. Because the next question was, if you receive something, would you change anything in your approach to self-advocacy in the future? So then you would just not take things personally and try to look at it from more like outside perspective, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Stacey or Anna, do you want to share anything here?
Yeah, I can say a little bit about something. I think that Suzanne has a great point in terms of constructive feedback, but I think there's also, Stacey mentioned putting things out on Twitter, and there are a lot of haters on Twitter, and I used to take it very personally in the beginning, and now I'm at a point where I just tick and block that person. And I recently read a book by Brené Brown, and she talks about being that warrior in the arena, or I don't remember her exact wording, but she recommends that you literally have a little note of the 5 people in your life that you really care about and whose feedback you care about. And you keep that somewhere where you have access to it. And then when someone criticizes you, you go through that list and you check, is one of those people on that list? And if they're not, then maybe don't take it personally. Maybe that feedback is not that important, but pay attention to whether someone is just being a hater or do they actually have a valid point. And I think if someone just criticizes you for the sake of criticizing you, then I think it's totally valid to just not react or block that person, because I think that your own mental well-being is always more important than these other people.
Makes sense. Agreed. Stacey?
Yeah, I think it's from both Suzanne and Anna's points that the one that springs out from Susanna's experience is something that happened to me, and it's actually the basis of my first talk that I did a couple of years ago. And that was trying to introduce a way that we could do trunk-based development at the company I was working at. And the tester in our team, to say he didn't agree with it is an understatement. And we actually had huge rows about it. We both got really upset with each other. And I think what Suzanne said really hit home there, because after about 2-3 months, sorry to that team, that cannot have been fun for them. We actually started to talk to each other and think about the feedback that was being given. And once we actually did that, we actually started to work together and we produced something really fantastic really quickly from that point. But at the point where you're just bashing against each other, all that happens is you spend energy and you get flustered and nothing happens except for the fact you don't enjoy your days. And I think from the other one that Anna was talking about, the, shall we say, less polite feedback, I have to think to this morning. I was doing a talk at 12 o'clock today, and it was a technical talk. Now, I didn't look at the chat because I don't believe in looking at the chat, but somebody I know was, and apparently I got some really nasty comments in there because I said you can't do something, and apparently the comment in the chat was, it's just inconvenient. It's not that you can't, it's just inconvenient. That's different. And also, apparently, I had a typo in my code. It all compiled, but apparently I spelled weather wrong, and that was a big thing in the comments. And yeah, it's taken years, but it's just like, you know what? I was up there giving a talk. If these people want to give up and give their own talk, they can go do it. And that comment just, I don't care. It's that comment's immaterial. It's unwarranted, and I can see it's unwarranted. And you know what? On one hand, it's just kind of funny that somebody wasted the energy to type it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people who are either miserable for some reason or angry, and they just don't know how to project that or like how to get rid of it. So they're maybe jealous when someone, you know, like you is, you know, speaking up about yourself. You're presenting something, you know, you're in the spotlight. So maybe they get jealous, and maybe sometimes that's the way for them to get it out of their system, which is totally wrong. But you should never let you put you down, because it will happen. Of course, it's the world we live in. But you know, if others could give talks, they will be in your place. But you're standing up, you know, you're giving the talk, so you should be proud of yourself. And people who talk like that, then ignore them. Really, like, come on, we live in a, come on, everyone is better than that. We should all like respect each other and not talk like that. Let me see. There was another question that I wrote earlier myself. In my mind, self-advocating for others sometimes can also be related to mentorship. So I would like to know, like, do you believe that that's important? And have you mentored some of your peers before?
Yeah, I'll take that one. As I said, I have a non-traditional tech background, and when I started out, I volunteered for a long time. I had a lot of people who helped me, who sat down with me, explained coding to me, or gave me advice for my talks. And I like to give back because I think it's our duty. Like, duty is a strong word, but I strongly believe in giving back to other people. And so something that I offer is speaker mentorship to other women, or sometimes I do career mentorship, but I think it's really rewarding. Maybe you've experienced that yourself, that when you do something for others, it's always more rewarding than doing something for yourself. Kind of like buying a gift for myself is maybe nice, but if I buy a gift for a friend, it always makes me feel better and makes my friend feel better. So yeah, I think I encourage you to mentor people. Sometimes people say, oh, I'm not there yet, I'm not senior enough, I'm not advanced enough. But by mentoring people, you actually also learn a lot. Like, you learn to explain things, you see things from a different perspective. And so I just find it really, really rewarding.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Stacy, Suzanne, do you want to share something as well about this?
Yeah, I think the anecdote about the present, that's totally it. It's when I've tried to help somebody promote themselves and do something, there was a developer that worked in my team probably a decade or so ago. And he came in and he was full of ideals and he wanted to rewrite the world. And he really annoyed a lot of people. And he had such enthusiasm, and helping him figure out how to direct that was fantastic to see. And it's kind of explained the whole, everything that you're saying, completely agree with every word of it, but unfortunately we're also in the real world and we can't drop everything for 5 years to do all of that. So pick the bits that you can do, and helping him find the bits that are going to help him. And what I really love now, I'm still in contact with him. I've not worked with him for years, but watching his career go through, watching the things he's done and what he's achieved. And it's like, it's just an honor to know him. And it's so awesome to know that you've helped build the foundation for that to come on. It's an absolutely magical feeling.
Yeah, it's really satisfying to watch something like that. Cool, thank you. Suzanne, or I'll go to the last question. Yeah, okay. So I think we have time for one more question. I noted down a quote: if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. I'm sure we have all experienced feeling lonely in a team. Sometimes tech can be a bit of a boys' club. Can you share any tips and resources for networking with other women in tech and overcoming those feelings of not belonging? Don't be shy. Come on.
I'm going to be honest here and say this is where I fall flat on my face. It's, I have anxiety issues sowieso. Wonderful Dutch word in an English thing here. But the thought of going out and doing that myself terrifies me to my very core. And I really do appreciate why people find it hard, because it's totally there for me too. So I'm sorry, I kind of jumped in with a little bit of a non-answer, but I'm really hoping that either Anna or Suzanne has something fantastic that I can also learn from here.
Yeah, what helps me, this is maybe even the hardest topic. Because yes, sometimes, speaking for myself, I do feel alone. But what helps me a lot is to find the people I care about. And luckily, I work at a huge company, and there's several groups or virtual teams where I do feel we have a great chemistry, and we have a good representation, and where we are all like those nerds. I can be socially off a little bit. That's okay. So it is good, and it, if it's at work, that's okay. But if it's in private or at a meetup group, that's fine as well. But what helps me is to find a safe space. Be it people in your organization, be it a meetup like I don't know, maybe Rails Girls or SheSharp or Pie Ladies Amsterdam, or maybe some other kind of a group where you can you have the safe space and you can get the energy. That's what helps me.
I totally agree with you, Stacy and Suzanne. It's really hard. I'm also someone that I'm kind of like a social introvert, I would call myself, but I have a lot of social anxiety as well. And I believe in what I call the buddy system, I would say. So maybe make friends with one woman at work or one woman in tech that you know, and ask her to introduce you to other groups. That's how I got into Pie Ladies London eventually. When I first moved to London, I hit up all the diversity groups and women in tech, and all of them are really big. And in the end, you end up sitting there by yourself amongst 100 women. But if you know someone and they can introduce you to others, it's a little bit easier. Also, same for work. Maybe you are invited to go to a conference or speak to a conference. Bring a fellow woman from work along and introduce her to that community. And also at Elastic, I really like that we have specific channels. We have one for diversity, inclusion, and belonging, for example. So that's something that we hold very dearly at Elastic, and it surely helps.
Yeah, agreed. Well, yeah, Suzanne?
No. It's exactly what the NS says. It's finding, if your employer has those groups, join them. And I think the buddy system is brilliant. You will find your tribe eventually. Don't think that you are the only one experiencing it.
Definitely.
Don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who might look confident, might look very happy with the situation, but maybe they're not. It's especially us in tech. We do feel alone. That's completely normal. If you are in a place where a lot of people, be it internally or externally, don't look like you or don't understand you, or find your tribe.
Yep. And if there are no groups like that where you work, start one. Be the first one, and then maybe others will follow after you, and they're just looking for someone to start it. You never know. But it's so great that we're here today sharing those things. And I encourage everyone that's listening to this to, if you want to talk, find us on LinkedIn. We can somehow provide our contact information if you want to talk to us and discuss this further. We'll be more than happy to, make connection, stay connected for the future, and help each other, because we are unfortunately a minority where we work. So yeah, let's stay together and help each other for the future. And with that, I believe we're done, unless anyone from the audience or anyone from you want to say something else. Any final words, comments you would like to mention? If not,
just thank you for organizing, and thank you for the opportunity, and it's been great.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Emily, team, everyone who was responsible for this. We really enjoyed it. And let's stay connected is my last take here. We can stay on the line, I guess, a bit longer to chat, or I guess Emily and the rest will be with us shortly.
Well, thank you so much. That was super, super helpful. I love all the ideas, and I think it's something that we all could work on. Like I said, I have 10 years of experience, and at the beginning, it was super difficult, especially when you were a good student. You're used to having that reward come to you immediately, and learning how to navigate a world in which that's not given to you. It's super hard. So I hope we can continue the discussion at our networking event, which is just now in about a minute, at SheSharp.co/networking. I'll put the URL in the chats. And so, but yeah, we're going to be gathering there to essentially have a happy hour. So please feel free to join us, and we can keep this discussion going. And hopefully you can find your tribe here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.